I do very much want to hear what's the role of an activist in all of this. Yes, there's a lot of laws being passed, and I'm hearing a lot of inequalities are being present, and we have not even been aware of all of them, or have been, but have been pushing them aside. Is the role of activists now being more imminent and more important than ever, or is it just like a constant battle that you've been having in your life?
Well, the way I look at it is that when there is a barrage of policies that comes our way as activists, we need to look at the policies that are for the poor, and then we probably then start analyzing them as activists, and then start taking action. Uh, I feel that in the processes that we've been doing with the GCPR project for the India group, there have been a bunch of policies that are about travel norms and travel regulation, air travel regulations, which concern the rich. Most people in India would perhaps never sit in an aircraft. But yeah, coming to another dimension of food supplies, coming to another way of looking at how small shops would operate within the lockdown. I think this is where the role of activists becomes very prominent in democracy, because here they are trying to ensure that 80% of the population is still able to survive while the country is fixing its healthcare system. And I feel at that stage, again, like Shruti said, we try to compartmentalize lawyers. Likewise, we also started compartmentalizing activists. There are education activists, there are healthcare activists, and then there are people who are information activists now who fight for the right to information and privacy and so on. But this is the time for everyone to come together, because I think this is affecting us all in this with the same magnitude. So I would believe that as the activist community in India, the first week was just about regrouping, because we weren't able to make sense of the pandemic. It was happening to us in India. We never thought that this would perhaps spread the way it did. But now I feel that the movement is more about asking social welfare policies, and it's in its current form. Maybe legal activists would be going to courts and fighting for those policies. Then there would be a bunch of other people who would be doing things online, and using social media networks to fundraise for the poor, for perhaps spreading more awareness. Then there are also activists who are working with the marginalized communities and ensuring that they get healthcare. For instance, I spoke about the man who got his test report after 2 days, and then everyone in his shop was also infected. Now, those guys were really fortunate, because there were 3 activists who were supporting them and ensured that they got the test done. For everyone else, they raised the money. By the way, I did a Google, I just did I just did a conversion. The amount of money required to do one test in a private hospital is $60 US. So getting $300 for 5 migrant laborers must have been some task for those activists. And I think this is where they are very important cogs in the wheel. They are actually one of the reasons that the system can still function. Civil society is one of the reasons why there are hundreds of activists on the ground now distributing food, going from one slum to another, and ensuring that those who have been confined in these very, very small places with high population density do get 2 square meals. Because if these poor people will step out of their slums, like Shruti said, they'll be attacked by the police very brutally. So again, negotiating with the police is something that the activists can do, because they would perhaps have more knowledge of the law and would be visibly from another class. So I think if there's ever a time to get out of our comfort zones and to be serving society, this is it. Whether one considers themselves an activist or not, whether one likes the label on the head or not, it's a difficult label to wear in the right-wing world. But I feel that this is the time when we have to serve our people. Otherwise, this is a regret that we'll carry forever.
I have to comment. I mean, it sounds incredible what you're describing. In a way, I would have thought that a crisis is going to bring people together. And what you're describing is actually the opposite. Like, there's been even more differentiation and even more discrepancies between people. And, people are not being fed the same way. They are not having the same opportunities when it comes to the healthcare system. And we are only now actually realizing how we are not collaborating with each other. So I actually believe that if India succeeds, it's going to be a very good use case scenario for the global scale. We actually see the same happening on between different jurisdictions, not only within India. Countries are now closing the borders, even though they have the capacity and even though they have the healthcare equipment, they're not sharing it with different jurisdictions because they first and foremost have to take care of their own citizens. And it seems to me as if, you know, first and foremost, people need to take care of their own castes or their own families, their own people that are following them. And that's actually a huge issue to be addressed. It actually brings me down to how do we build reputation in this world? How do we really bring the equalities into place?
I wanted to build on what Anja was saying, especially that last part with things becoming very localized, because you think of India and as a country, and it is huge, and even in little islands like mine where I live, you're seeing communities are starting to sort of rally within smaller groups and localized actions starting to be taken within those communities. Are you seeing that as well, where you have states within India and then smaller communities? Are you seeing independent grassroots organizing on that level, and less dependency on that higher chain and dependency at the federal level?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the only way out. There is very little possibility of a centralized command and control system over here, where food would come from one warehouse and be distributed to millions of people. Philanthropy and activism both has to be very local. I think organizing has been happening more through social media and through other creative means. People have been, figuring out ways to donate, like, each house would perhaps donate 1 kg of rice, from middle class communities. And then, some people, some activists would be collecting it, and volunteers would be going around collecting that food and then going and cooking it in somewhere in a safe place where there's social distancing is possible. Perhaps cooking in a local temple or a local, Sikh temple, which is called the Gurdwara, or any other community place for that matter. And then utilizing any open space to distribute the food, observing principles of social distancing. So I think all of that has actually made us very strong. I think a lot of communities have realized their responsibility like never before. But that, having said that, it can only happen in communities which are empowered or perhaps have the means to serve others. And that shows that there are silos of great projects going across the city. If you look at fundraising pages, fundraising campaigns happening, which are hyper local, absolutely hyper local, for like maybe for a city that has 20 million population, I have seen fundraising campaigns only for 10,000 people. Because there is a certain community which was relocated from one part of the city, from a slum. They were evicted from a slum and thrown to the outskirts of the city. So they have a fundraising campaign going on for them. But otherwise, apart from these small examples of which make us very hopeful about the future, local organizing has been limited to financial means. And I feel that, again, that throws us back to the state, our dependence on the state, that we are looking for some kind of monetary support or perhaps food supply support coming from a so-called abstract body of a state, which will, from somewhere there'll be a miracle, there'll be a truck coming in with loads of food grains in it, and some person's just going to be distributing it. And I think that is all because these are dynamic networks which are coming across, which are building as time goes on. They're developing it every day, but this is something that's still going to take time for us to really kind of crystallize these kind of networks for the future.